Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a pretty radical experiment. It's one that could, just maybe, finally fix one of the internet's biggest, most fundamental flaws. How do we actually pay the people who build the invisible stuff that everything else relies on? And this quote right here, it just nails the problem perfectly. Think about it for a second. The open source software that powers, well, everything, your phone, the banking system, you name it, is mostly built and patched up by volunteers in their spare time. It's an incredible, generous system, but man, is it fragile. So here's how we're going to tackle this. First, we'll dig into that open source paradox. Then we'll see how a project called Gittensor is trying to basically industrialize coding. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how the machine actually works, how it turns lines of code into actual capital, and then we'll hit the big controversy, the pushy miner problem. And we'll wrap it all up by asking the million-dollar question. Is this a brilliant experiment or a complete catastrophe waiting to happen? Okay, so let's start with the big why. Why does something like Gittensor even need to exist? Well, it all boils down to a quiet economic crisis that's been brewing at the heart of open source software for years. It's what economists call the free rider problem. You have these massive, multi-billion-dollar companies building their entire empires on software that's maintained by like a handful of people for free. It's just not sustainable. You get massive developer burnout, and way more scary, you get huge security risks when that critical code just gets abandoned. For decades, people have tried to fix this with things like donations and grants, but that's always been pretty sporadic, unpredictable. But what if there was another way? A totally new, kind of radical answer is starting to take shape, and its name is Gittensor. So meet Gittensor. At its core, it's a protocol. Think of it as a specialized mini-network, or subnet, that lives on a bigger blockchain called Bittensor. And Gittensor has one very specific job: to create a real, functioning market for open-source code. Instead of hoping for a one-off grant, it uses a constant, automatic, algorithmic system to pay developers for their work. The basic idea here is actually pretty simple to grasp. Gittensor is essentially a bridge. On one side, you've got GitHub, the place every developer on Earth knows and uses. On the other side, you've got the blockchain. By connecting the two, Gittensor can take a normal code contribution, a pull request, and magically turn it into something that can be verified, traded, and has real monetary value. Okay, so that sounds cool in theory, but how does this machine actually work? Right? How do you get from typing a few lines of code to actually getting paid? Let's look into the hood. The system really has two key roles. First, you've got the miner. But forget everything you know about crypto mining. In this world, the miner is just a software developer. Their job is to write good code for important, pre-approved projects. Then you have the validator. You can think of them as the auditors. Their job is to check the developer's work, make sure it was actually accepted, and give it a score. And the whole process flows like this. A developer, or miner, finds a bug and writes some code to fix it. Then, the project's own maintainer, who is totally separate from this system, has to decide if the code is good. If they like it, they merge it. Now that merge is the trigger. That's the proof of work. The developer then sends a claim out to the network, and the validators all rush in to confirm that the merge really happened, and then boom, the reward is issued. And this quote just sums it up so perfectly. This is the big difference from old-school crypto mining. You're not using a powerful graphics card to burn a ton of electricity. Here, the hardware that matters is your brain, your ability to think, to understand a problem, and to write elegant, useful code. That is the rare resource being mined. So, okay, this isn't just about sending a few bucks to individual developers. The vision here is way bigger. This is about creating an entirely new economic model, a whole new asset class built on top of the collective work of coders. The system has its own token, and here's how the pie is sliced. A full 41% goes directly to the developers, the miners doing the work. Another 41% goes to the validators, the auditors who are securing the network and checking all the work. The last 18% goes back to the subnet owner to keep the lights on and fund future development. It's all about incentivizing everyone involved. And to give you a sense of the scale here, one estimate projected that by 2025, the total value being paid out to the developers alone could be around $75,000 a month. We're not talking about pocket change. This is a serious economic engine designed to pull in some serious coding talent. Which brings us to this wild, kind of mind-bending idea they call liquid labor. See, when you buy and hold the Gittensor token, you're not just holding some random cryptocurrency. What you're really doing is speculating on the future value that will be created by this entire global workforce. It's like buying a stock,
But instead of investing in one company, you're investing in the collective productivity of thousands of brilliant minds all over the world. It is, quite literally, a bet on human ingenuity.
But, and this is a huge but, when you attach cold, hard cash to something that has always been driven by passion, you get problems. Big problems. And this is where we run smack into the pushy miner problem, a massive cultural collision that's shaking this experiment to its core. You see, open source has always had a missionary culture. People show up because they're passionate, because they believe in the project, because they love the community. Gittensor introduces a mercenary culture. People show up to make money. And when those two worlds smash into each other, you get some serious friction. The project maintainers who are used to working with fellow missionaries are now getting swamped by mercenaries just trying to maximize their payout. And this whole situation is a perfect, almost scary, real-world example of a famous economic idea called Goodhart's Law. It's a really important concept, and to understand the challenge Gittensor's facing, we really have to unpack what it means. Just let that sink in for a second. In the Gittensor system, the measure of good work is getting a pull request merged. But the moment that becomes the target, the thing you're chasing for a paycheck, the entire game changes. Suddenly, the goal isn't to write good code anymore. The goal is to get that merge, no matter what it takes. And this leads to some really predictable and pretty awful behaviors. You get fragmentation, where a developer takes one decent fix and splits it into 10 tiny ones to get 10 rewards. You get triviality, where projects get flooded with pointless typo fixes. You get social engineering, where miners literally harass the volunteer maintainers begging for a merge. And then there's the biggest danger of all, collusion, where a crooked maintainer and a miner could team up to merge total garbage code just to split the rewards. So, this is the critical point. Where does all of this lead? Right now, Gittensor is standing at a fork in the road, and it's looking at two completely different futures. On the one hand, you've got the utopian dream. This thing could actually become the sustainable economic engine that finally pays open source developers what they're worth and unleashes a tidal wave of innovation. But on the other hand, you have the dystopian nightmare. Our most important software projects turn into these chaotic battlefields of financial spam, actively poisoning the very code our world runs on. But through all this, we have to remember what makes this experiment so important, so groundbreaking. Unlike all the other attempts that rely on grants, Gittensor is offering a constant, real-time flow of rewards based on actual tangible output. It really is the first serious attempt to industrialize software development. And all of this leaves us with one last really tough question to chew on. If you were running an open source project, would you put up with a pushy, money-motivated contributor if it meant you got a steady stream of free labor, all paid for by some external system? It's a fascinating trade-off, and how the world answers that question could end up defining the future of how we build software.